Hey guys, in today's video, I'm going to be teaching you how to build an AI email autoresponder that generates the perfect response every time because we're connecting it to a knowledge base, giving it previous emails, and teaching it how to respond in your tone of voice. And the best part is we're going to be able to make this entire AI automation basically for free using Make, Airtable, and ChatGPT, where I'm going to be walking you through everything step by step the entire way. And because you guys are awesome, I'm going to be giving away all the prompts and Make templates completely for free. Just check that link down in the description below to download everything. But enough of that, let's go ahead and hop into the video. And to make this video super easy to watch, I've broken it up into 3 parts. First, I'm going to show you a high-level overview of the solution and actually show you it running so you can see exactly what we're going to be building together. Then we're going to get our hands dirty and dive into the first scenario in Make, where you're going to learn how we can use Make plus ChatGPT to pull down emails, filter them, and then eventually store them over into Airtable. And then in part 3, we're going to be actually using all that information we've been gathering to build a second scenario where we're going to go off and craft the perfect email response. So enough of that, let's go ahead and dive into the first part where you can see the solution in action. All right, guys, so let me go ahead and give you a high-level overview of everything that we're going to be building to go ahead and create this awesome AI email autoresponder. So first things first, we're going to be using Make to build 2 different scenarios. Scenario 1 is all about going ahead and pulling that information down from Gmail. It's going to filter out spam, then it's going to pull out all the content from that email and store it over in Airtable. Airtable is going to be our source of truth and our database for this entire project. Then once we have stored that email, it's now time to go off and go ahead and craft that perfect email draft. And what I mean by that is we're going to look for new records in our database. Then we're going to go ahead and put together and combine all the knowledge sources we need. So we're going to go off and pull previous emails from that sender. Then we're going to fetch our knowledge base. So every piece of information that the AI needs to know about us, our business, who we're about, we're going to pull that down. And we're also going to pull down the voice of client prompt. So what do we sound like? How do we want to respond to this email? Then we're going to combine all of that over into a ChatGPT prompt that I'll be sharing with you guys to craft the perfect response. From there, we're going to save that perfect response, the title and the subject and the body of that email over to Gmail so it'll live as a draft so we can easily send it. Then, like I said earlier, Airtable is going to be our database for this entire project. And the reason I've done it this way is because I've actually built this solution to help out a local real estate agent. And I wanted to give them an easy way to easily update their knowledge base, so everything about them. And we also want to give them an easy way to quickly update their voice and how they respond to emails. And this Airtable just makes it super easy to go off and easily update all the information that they would need to craft the perfect response every time. Now let me go ahead and show you exactly what type of response this can generate. So I recently got a message saying, hey, I would like to do some sort of sponsorship or something like that. This is the email that I received. I'm sure he won't mind, he's getting awareness, just me talking about it right now. And basically you can see he was like, hey, I built this. I think you would like this. And what's cool is because I've, I've provided a knowledge base of who I am as a creator. I've talked about how I like to respond. It was able to generate this type of response, which just helps me speed up communication with clients. A local real estate agent can do the same thing with their clients. So you can see like, hey, Brian, thanks for reaching out. I've instructed this to say like, hey, I'm not doing sponsorship deals. And you can see in my knowledge base that it actually acted on that, where it's saying like, hey, appreciate you reaching out. This sounds awesome. Right now, I'm not looking to do any promotion or collaborations. However, congrats on building your channel. This is awesome. Keep up the great work. Super excited for you to go off and crush it. That's exactly how I would talk as a regular person. And this was done completely through the automation that we're about to build together. So hopefully you're as psyched as I am. And let's go ahead and hop over to scenario number 1, where we're going to go ahead and start pulling stuff from Gmail and eventually storing it over in Airtable. Let's go ahead and hop over to scenario number 1. All right, guys, so it's time for us to go ahead and start creating scenario number 1. So first things first, go ahead and hop over to Make and create an account. If this is your first time signing up for Make, I actually have an affiliate link down below and you'll get your first 1,000 operations on Make completely for free when you join up. So click that link in the description below if you're just joining. But first things first, what are we trying to do? Well, we want to create a new scenario in order for us to go off and start fetching emails from Gmail and eventually storm over to Airtable. So in order to do this, we need to create a scenario to create that automation. So we're going to click create new scenario over here. And then we're going to go ahead and first things first, let's go ahead and give it a name so we don't lose track. So this is our first automation. So we're just going to call it 1. So we know it's the first step. And we're just going to call this our AI email autoresponder because that's what it is. And what we're going to do is go ahead and just call this fetch and store. That way it's very clear what's going on inside of this automation. Great. Now, what do we want to do? Well, first things first, this is our starting point. So in our case, we want to go ahead and first connect up a Gmail application. So we're going to click the plus button, and then what we can do is go ahead and type in Gmail. And as you can see, when you type in Gmail, it comes up with a bunch of different options that we can choose. We can watch emails, copy emails, so forth and so forth. But in our case, the first thing that we want to do is go ahead and watch emails. So every time a new email comes in, we can go ahead and trigger this process, which is exactly what we want to do. Now, if this is your first time connecting, it's going to go ahead and ask you like, hey, which email would you like to connect to? And it's going to come up with that like approve access to Google. So that's what you want to go ahead and do if you've not already, connected to Gmail in the past. Next, what you can do is go ahead and say, which folder would you like to use in order for us to pull and watch emails from? So in our case, what we're going to do is we want to go ahead and actually just go ahead and say all mail. Quick catch, this will actually pull from your sent inbox and from your draft inbox. So we're going to do a filter later on to make sure that we only actually get information specifically from basically our inbox. So in order to do that, what we can go ahead and do is say, I would like to do a Gmail filter, and then we can pass in a custom query. And this is like if you were to hop over into the Gmail application and go in the little search bar, you know how you can actually say like, I only want to look from emails from Brandon or emails from this person. That's exactly the same type of queries that we're going to pass in here. So we're going to do two, and I'll explain exactly why. First things first, we only want to pull down small emails. So if someone sends you a huge email that has a bunch of pictures, links, and videos, it's actually going to break inside of Make because you're only allowed so much memory inside of a single operation. So we're going to focus on doing small emails. Next, what we're going to do is focus on only grabbing emails from our inbox folder. And this is how we're only going to, what we want to do is prevent an endless loop like I did the first time I built this, where I would fetch an email from the inbox, then I would create an email and it would end up in a draft, and it would go, oh look, there's a new email in a draft, and then it would create another email based on a draft. So you would end up in an infinite loop, always trying to create new emails. So specifically only pull from the inbox. Next, what do we want to do? Well, we want to go ahead and say, how many emails do you want to fetch per result? In our case, we're going to say 50. I want to go ahead and pull a bunch of emails to process. So we can go ahead and click OK. And then what's awesome, and I'll show you how you can change this later, but you can choose when do you want to start this. You can go ahead and say, I want to pick a specific date. So you can actually come in here and say like, I want to start this automation from yesterday. Or you can say, I actually want to go ahead and start it from now on. You actually have a bunch of choices. Or you can be even more specific and actually click a specific email that you want to go ahead and choose as your first email. So I'll go ahead and run it. Fingers crossed nothing crazy comes up. And then what we're going to do is whenever it pops up, you can see there's just a bunch of Sentry things, but we can go ahead and just like, I want to go ahead and run it from this email that we got earlier today, and I can go ahead and actually run it. Let me go ahead and show you what that looks like. So you have two options for running. You can run a specific module by clicking run this module only, or you can run the entire process. So we're going to go ahead and just run the entire process so I can show you exactly what you can start to expect out of operations like this. So what's happening, it was thinking, and you can see it actually pulled a bunch of emails. So because we picked like what, 8 emails ago, you can actually see it's actually going to go ahead and start showing some of these emails. So yeah, the one we clicked, the master voice flow automations, you can actually see this is an email. And what's cool is you can actually come in here and see it has a bunch of properties that we're going to be using throughout the rest of this tutorial. So you can see I can pick text content, and you can see like, hey, welcome. And we're actually going to use that text content, plus we're also going to be looking at the email subject line. So we can actually see, oh, okay, this is not junk. This was actually email that we wanted to receive. Or no, this is junk. I actually don't want to respond to something like this. Okay, cool. You now have your first module and your first scenario. And now it's up to us to go ahead and start adding in the next step, which is going to be filtering out and making sure that we only look for emails that are authentic. So let me go ahead and show you how we're going to do that. We're going to click plus to add a new module, and then we can go ahead and start working with ChatGPT. Now, in this case, what we want to do is go ahead and type in show more, and we specifically want to look at doing a create a completion prompt. This is basically how you would normally interact with ChatGPT. So we're going to go ahead and click this prompt. And if this is your first time using OpenAI, what it's going to do is say, hey, you do not have a connection set up to OpenAI. Can you please go ahead and add in your developer key? Or actually, yeah, I think it's only the developer key. So you actually come in here and you'll actually add, so if I'll just show you, you would add in your API key right here. So going ahead and create that over in OpenAI, come back here, paste it in, and then you'll be good to go to make all sorts of requests that you would like. Okay, so now let's go ahead and dive into setting up this module to go ahead and start filtering out emails to make sure that we're only responding to the types of emails that we want to respond to. So now it's time for us to go ahead and configure this entire connection. But before we do that, let's go ahead and think about what we're ultimately trying to do. We are trying to pick if an incoming email is valid or not. So ultimately, this is a categorization call. We're going to say if it's spam, I want you to tell me that it's not valid. If it is an email from my buddy, it is valid. So what we're going to do is we don't need a super intensive model to do classification. We can actually use a very straightforward, cheap model like 4.0 mini, where it's going to cost way less than a penny to go ahead and classify these incoming emails. So it's going to be very cheap. Now, what we can do next is we need to go ahead and configure the instructions for this call. So what we're going to do is add a message like we were chatting with it. So in our case, we're just going to say this is coming from the assistant. So the AI is actually doing this. And what we're going to do is go ahead and paste in the prompt. And I'm going to read it to you. And remember, you can download everything. I just don't want you guys to have to watch me type everything out from scratch. So let me go ahead and show you exactly what's going on in this completed version so that you can go ahead and understand it when you're off building your own projects like this. And I'm going to close out of this for a second. So here's the ultimate goal. And I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more so you can see, all right, you are an AI assistant who specializes in analyzing raw email content and determining if it's from an actual person or if it's promotional spam. From there, what I want you to do is look at the raw response and the sender's email address to determine if this is valid. From there, what we're going to do is say like, all right, if it's from an actual person in a conversational tone, or if it's a sponsorship, because I do want to respond to sponsors, you're going to be tailoring this, what your filter qualifications are going to be. I want you to return with a JSON object. That's the most important part. We are basically going ahead and putting our programming hats on and saying JSON is super easy to respond to. Now, what we're going to do is say, I want you to respond in a JSON prompt like this, where we're going to say, here's your object. The key is going to be if it's valid, and the value is going to be true or false. Then we're going to say, if it's a promotional spam, like bunch of generic language, mass distributed content, what we're going to do is just say, hey, it's not valid. Pretty straightforward. And then what I like to do when I'm developing these is I'd like to do a few scenario runs. And then I basically add, like that was my initial entire prompt. And then I like to come back in here and add in additional instructions if it's not filtering properly. So that's why I added these instructions. Make the following types of message not valid as well. So if it comes from a no reply, a support, if it's a notification, anything like that, there's no reason for me to say it's valid because it was just an update not meant for me to respond to. It was just something for me to know. And then if it is, coming from a sponsorship, I would like them to basically say like, yes, this is valid because I do want to respond to these. And finally, make sure you only respond with JSON. Do not add any additional commentary or explanation because sometimes it would be like, oh, hey, looked at this email, it is valid. Nope, I only want that object. Now, here's where we get to start actually incorporating some of the data from our previous Gmail request. So you can see I've actually outlined a section to where we can start adding in the sender and the content. So when it comes to the sender, all we're trying to do is we want to look at that email address. Because if you remember, what we want to do if it included no reply, notification, something like that, basically say it's not valid. So we need to go ahead and pass in that email address. And then next, when it comes to content, what we're going to do is hop over to text content. So you can see, great, we're going to go ahead and put that in there. Awesome. So now that that's set up, what we're going to do is go ahead and close this. And we are going to save, basically, we can go ahead and save it. But before we do, I just want to show you a few extra things that I would like you to see. So when it comes to max completion tokens, this is how much it should respond with. And basically, in our case, we're only responding with valid or not valid. So we can go ahead and say like, hey, this is a very simple response. Don't give me a ton of information because I just want a JSON object. Now, what's next is we can go ahead and start showing some advanced settings. Now, what we're trying to do now is say, I want the response format to be a JSON object. And I actually want to parse that value, which is going to be true or false. And this is pretty much everything that we're going to be using. I just want to give you some additional information. Temperature is how creative the response is going to be. In our case, we want it to not be creative at all. So we're just going to go ahead and bump that to like 0.3 because it needs to just be pretty like Yes, true or false. Just think analytically, do not be creative. And for the rest of it, we can just go ahead and leave it pretty blank. So we're going to go ahead and say, okay, and we now have our OpenAI set up. So what we can do to go ahead and retest this run, so we can verify that things work. Let's go ahead and right click on Google and we can say choose where to start. And we're going to once again go back a little bit and we're going to go ahead and pick just way back here and go ahead and, all of these should be promotional spam and we just want to check to make sure it works. So we're going to go ahead and click run once and then it's going to go off and it's going to pull from Gmail. It's going to grab those 7, 8, 10 emails and it's going to start passing it over to ChatGPT. You can see it's processing them in real time. So let's go ahead and look at the results to see what we got. So for each operation, you can see we started to get inputs, which were basically the message we sent. So let's come in here. It's the entire prompt we just passed. And at the bottom, you can see it passed in the information that we asked it to. So like it was, the sender was from no reply and the email content was this. So all around, pretty cool. But the important part is we want to go ahead and look at the output. So if you look at the output result, it's going to be that JSON object, which is valid and then true or false. So all around, pretty cool. Now, what we're going to do in the next step is start going off and actually extracting some of the content from Gmail. And then we're eventually ultimately going to start saving this over in Airtable. So let's go ahead and start working on the next step where if it was valid, we're going to go ahead and start pulling out some of the content from that email. So actually it's even simpler than I thought. Because we are pulling from text content, there's no reason to have that extra OpenAI call where we're going to extract text from HTML. We're just going to go ahead and start using from Gmail. We're going to go ahead and just, because we're going to look at that text content, there's no reason to go off and actually try and extract. Previously when I was working on it, I was pulling from HTML content where we had to parse all of this and pull out the text. But now what we're going to do is just strictly look at text content. So now this means it's actually time for us to go ahead and start trying to save this data over to Airtable. And what we can do is before we put it in Airtable, we need to do a quick filter. Let me show you what I mean. So let's go ahead and add a module. And then what we're going to do is type in Airtable. And for right now, we're just going to say create a record. And we're just going to leave that there for a second. So we're just going to press X. The important part is you and I can go ahead now and start working on adding in a filter to go off and actually make sure that we're only passing over information that was not spam. So let's go ahead and update this so it's even more clear what we're doing. So in our case, we're going to say, let's just go ahead and say filter out spam. Great. And now what we're going to do is okay, well, we filtered everything. We categorized everything as valid or not valid. So let's go ahead and act on that. So you can click on those connections and then we're going to go ahead and say only process valid emails. And then we can go ahead and start saying, well, what is the actual condition? So in our case, the condition is I want to look at the result from OpenAI. And because I've already run this, it actually goes ahead and shows me what that basically categorization could look like, that JSON object that we're getting. And I want to say, I only want to look at results that are valid. So equal to, in our case, we're just going to go ahead and say, I want to make sure that they're equal to true and make sure you do this lowercase. So that's what we're going to do. And we're going to say, okay, now this is what's going to happen anytime we run it going forward is it's going to say, okay, I looked at 10 emails, only 2 were valid. Only those 2 valid emails are going to get processed and passed to the next state where we're going to go ahead and start storing those emails over in Airtable. So right now we're going to take a quick pause. We're going to head over to Airtable and start setting up some of these actual tables so it'll make sense and we can actually start storing this information. So let's go ahead and head over to Airtable. All right, guys, so I went ahead and hopped over to Airtable, and a quick reminder about our current goal. We are trying to store the emails that we want to respond to, because in scenario 2, we're going to pull out these emails and actually write up the response to them. But first, we need to set up a database to store all of these emails. So what we're going to do is first head over to airtable.com that you're looking at right now. And once you're here, the first thing that we want to do is go off and actually create a new workspace. The reason we're doing this is because the way we're kind of setting things up is I'm imagining Airtable being a way to store your work for each client. So in our case, I was initially creating this for a real estate agent, and then I went ahead and created a new workspace to do it for myself. So in your case, you're going to make a workspace and call it whatever you want. I'm just going to call this YouTube because this is my YouTube demo. And then what we're going to do is click create. Once we've updated the name, we're going to click create. Now what this is going to do is say, hey, how do you want to start? Airtable offers a bunch of cool features to like where you can briefly describe what you're trying to build, and it'll go ahead and create dashboards and tables and everything you need. But we're just going to go from scratch so we can understand the basics of what we're trying to do. All right, so first things first, let's close out of all the pop-ups and let's give this a name. So we're just going to call this YouTube database, just so later when we're looking at all of our different interfaces and databases, we'll know exactly what we're looking at. So great, we've updated that. Now, as you can see inside of Airtable, it kind of looks just like a regular database view. It really also kind of just looks like an Excel sheet where you have columns and you have rows. Now, the important quick thing to note is inside of Airtable, and when you're working with a table, you have to have a primary key, kind of just like working with databases, but this is the unique field that is unique to each row. So in our case, we're about to update this table to work specifically for emails. So we need to also think about updating the table name, and we need to think about what is going to be the unique primary key for each one of our fields. Well, in our case, that is going to be the email ID. So you can just double click. You can call this email ID, and then this is going to be the unique field for each one of our emails. And let's go ahead and clear out of this default rows that are just empty because we're only going to be working with valid data. Now, what else do we want to store? Well, in our case, we're going to try and store the date, and we're going to include everything else about the email. So subject line, content, senders, recipients, everything else that's related to the email. So let's go ahead and update these one by one and talk about it as we go. So first thing is date. What kind of field is this? Well, it is a date. And then let's go ahead and start going through each one of these throughout the way. So what do we want to do? This is going to be let's just do a 24-hour time in ISO standard. I want to include the time. We'll do time format in 24 hours. You can alter these. It's not like crucial that you have this when it comes to same time zone. Not crucial because it's only us working on it. We will go ahead and display the current time zone. And that looks pretty great for our initial start. So we're going to say, great, this is our date field. It looks great. Now what we're going to do is start working on setting up our sender. So our sender is going to be who the heck actually sent this email. So in our case, it's going to be sender. Sender is just going to, once again, be a inline text field. So we'll just type in text. It'll be a single line text. That looks great. Then what we're going to do next is set up recipients. So recipients is going to be, once again, who's receiving this email. And this is super important because later on, when we're building out our email responder, we want to have knowledge of all previous conversations with people who are involved on this email chain. So if I was emailing Bob and Bob was a recipient on 5 emails that me and him were tagged on, that is context that we're eventually going to pass over to OpenAI. So it goes, oh, you guys were talking about meeting on the 21st. I know that because I've looked through previous emails that involve this recipient. So I know that it's cool to bring this into the conversation because you were both tagged on that piece of information. So once again, this is going to be a single line text. We're going to save it, and we're just going to start now. We're going to start adding in our own fields, and we're getting pretty close towards the end. And the next one is going to be content. So content is actually going to be the text of the email. So this is going to be long text, and this is where we're going to look at a few new fields. So we can enable rich text formatting. We'll go ahead and save that. And then we're going to start working on setting up 2 different fields. So the next one is going to be created at time. This is a necessary field whenever later on we want to try and do some filtering. So just know this is needed. So we're going to do created at, and we can do created time. It is important that they be the exact same thing. And for this one, we can actually just go ahead and keep it, some of these the same. So local, included time, and we'll just leave it how it comes. Great. All right, so we now have all the core information that we need, all the columns. So eventually when we pull stuff out of Gmail, we have a nice formatted way to save it inside of Airtable. So let's go ahead and hop back over to Make, where we're gonna go ahead and actually start adding in and connecting and mapping all the data from there to here. So let's go ahead and hop back over to Make. All right, guys, so we're back over inside of Make, and I'm gonna show you guys how we can start putting all of those emails over into Airtable. So go ahead and click on Airtable. And once we've done that, what we can do is go ahead and click on Base. And Base is going to be the new database that we just created together. So go ahead and click YouTube database. And then from there, what's going to happen is it's going to show and pull down all the available tables. So in our case, there's only one, email. And then from there, it's going to show all the potential columns that were inside of our table. And it's going to allow us to start populating data inside of each one of these columns. So let's go ahead and start knocking these out one by one. And I'll explain exactly why we're doing what we're doing. So email ID, let's go ahead and close out that and just look strictly at Gmail. So let's go ahead and click email ID. When it comes to date, we're just going to click date. When it comes to sender, we just want to go ahead and pull out the email address so that we can search on it later. And then when it comes to recipients, this is where things start to get fun, guys. So if you think about it, whenever someone sends an email, like imagine your boss sends you an email, they can also send that same email to multiple other people or multiple other recipients. So what we're trying to do ultimately, if you remember, recipients is just comes down, if you look at the property, is just a single line of text. So we need one string to save in here. However, if you come back over here and you look at recipients, well, it's an array. And we ultimately have to figure out how the heck we're going to go from an array to a single string. And I think the best way to look at this is this visualization right here. So let me walk you through what's going on. That's going to get a little bit more programmy, but once I think it clicks, you're going to go, oh, that makes this makes total sense. So the blue is what we're given. We're giving an array where each item in the array is an object. Each object is an individual person who received the email, and we're able to access their name and their address. And ultimately, what we're trying to do is start going from this array of objects all the way down to a simple string, just like this down here. So what we're trying to do is go, okay, we have to tackle this. First things first, what we can do is we can go, okay, I'd like to take this array of objects to an array of strings. We can do that in one operation, and I'll show you how. Then once we have this array of strings, we need to combine it together. Join it is the keyword, join it together into one final string, just like this. So let me show you exactly how we're going to first tackle this first operation, which is going from objects to string. Let me show you how we do that. So let's come back over here and we're going to type in a special keyword. It's called map. And what map does is it takes in a complex array. So an array of objects is what that means. And we can go ahead and click on recipient. Great. Now let's use a colon and then from there, or semicolon. And then from there, what we get to do is start pulling out whatever value we want from that object. So what value do we want? Well, if we hover over recipients, I hover over email address, you can see, oh, the specific name of this field is address. So if I want the email address, like that's the key, address is the key. So if I want that value, I have to give it that key. So you're going to type in address. Great. Now go ahead and close it off. Things are valid. And just a quick recap. So far, we've gone from objects and we've now pulled out the email string. This is the value. This is the string. Now what we're going to do is we now need to go, okay, I have this array of strings. I just want to go to a single string. How do I do that? Well, we actually start adding in another operation. We type in join. So what join's going to do is it's going to take the result of map. So it's kind of like, think back to like what order of operations in middle school, high school, whenever they learn it nowadays. And it's going to go, okay, map's going to happen first and map's going to give me back an array of strings. And now what I want to do is I want to join together all of those strings. I'm hoping this makes sense. It's definitely not the most intuitive, but after you see it, hopefully once or twice, you're like, okay, this makes sense. Definitely would recommend watching this multiple times. So we're going to go, well, how do we want to join each one of these items in an array? Well, we just want to put a little space. Now, adding a space is pretty straightforward. You click A, the special character, and it shows you all the special keywords. So in our case, space. And then we're going to close it off. Great. And just a quick recap, because this is done, recipients is done. And just a quick recap, we just went from a complex array of objects all the way down to a single string that we can easily store in our database. Give yourself a pat on the back. This was one of the more complex steps in the entire process, and hopefully it makes sense how we did it and why we did it. Great. Now, what else are we going to do? Well, we're going to store the content of the email. So we're going to hop back over to star, and we're going to scroll down and click text content. Fantastic. We're going to click OK because that's mostly done. I did realize we made a small mistake together. We need to hop back over here and we need to go ahead and insert left a new column for subject. We need to know what was the text subject line of this email. So we're going to go ahead and create the field. And then if we hop back over here, what's cool, inside of Airtable, what we can do is we can click this little refresh button and it'll go back and grab all the different columns that we just added. And there should be one blank column now, subject, and we can just grab subject right here. Awesome. So we've now officially gone ahead and mapped all the data from our email over to a new record that will go inside of Airtable. We're going to click OK. Now what I'm going to do, we're going to take a quick pause. I'm going to send over a sample email that should pass, and we're going to go ahead and run this operation together so you can see it go from Gmail, get filtered, and saved over to Airtable. So I'm going to pause and I'll be right back. All right, so I just sent myself a valid email. So let's go ahead and run this entire scenario so we can see it all in action. So first off, go ahead and right click Gmail. click choose where to start, and we're going to go ahead and pick an email. And we're going to go ahead and just pick like 5 or 6 emails back so you can see the filtering in action. So let's just go ahead and click here. Then what we're going to do is go ahead and click run once. Now what this will do is it's going to, from that selected email, it's going to grab that one and all emails past it. It's going to pass those over to ChatGPT. We're going to filter out and only grab valid emails and then pass those valid emails over to Airtable and create a new record. Awesome. So let's go ahead and hop over to Airtable so we can see it in action. So what's awesome is you can see it worked. So we have pulled out and passed all that information over. So you can see there was only one email, so the mapping worked pretty well. So you can see subject line, awesome content, tooting my own horn. And then you can see like, hey Brandon, I've been watching your videos for a long time, like the content, are you available for one-on-one coaching? I need help building out an AI project, cheers. So yeah, so you can see it officially worked and made the credit at time. Everything is looking great. So we now have officially set ourselves up for success to go ahead in the next scenario. We're going to be listening for every time a new email is created over here, a new record's created, and we know we need to go off and generate a new response to that email. And just a few final things for housekeeping. I do like to go ahead and update these names so that we can keep track of everything. So what I like to do is let's go ahead and just do a little bit of housekeeping, and we're just going to call this create new email record. So that way we can keep track of what's going on there. And then that looks great. All right, cool. So we're officially done with scenario 1. Give yourself a pat on the back for making this scenario inside of Make. And let's go ahead and start working on pulling down all the information we need, setting up some more databases inside of Airtable, and generating those new email responses. All right, head over to section number 2. All right, guys, so welcome to part number 3, where we're going to start working on building out that second scenario to pull all the emails down, figure out the voice of the client, knowledge bases, and then actually generate a response and save it as a draft to Gmail. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, we're going to hop back over and we're going to create a new scenario. And this is going to be the second step in our AI email autoresponder. And we're just going to call this, fetch and draft AI email. Okay, great. So that's going to be the name of this. Let's go ahead and save it. You can just do Command S, Control S to save it. Now we're going to start walking through this part by part. And so you can see how we go from a new record in Airtable all the way over to a Gmail draft. So first things first, go ahead and click the plus button. And we're going to be working with Airtable, and we are going to be looking for watch record. And let's go ahead and actually start filling this out together, and then we'll rename it just so we can keep track of everything that's going on. So we're going to do base. In this case, the base is going to be our YouTube database that we set up earlier. And then what we're going to do is then first click the table. And once we say, yep, I want to be looking at the emails table, this is where things start getting interesting, because a while ago I told you we had to set that created at time. Well, that created at time is what's going to allow us to basically be the trigger. So you have to have a created at time in order for this to work. So you can see down here, you need to have a created at time or last modified to re-trigger this. So in our case, we're going to say, yep, I want to do created at time. And then the next is going to be, what do you want to appear as basically when you're like reviewing all the automations that have gone through, what do you want to appear so you can understand what's going on? So we're just going to say, I just want to use the subject of the email to figure out like, oh yeah, 5 new records were just created. And to quickly look through what was going on, I just want to look at the subject of the email. Then what do we want the limit to be? We're just going to do 50, bump it up. And then from there, we can go ahead and say we are done. So this is looking great. We're just going to do from now on. So we can actually go ahead and we'll come back and change that later. Now what we're going to do, rename it. We're just going to say watch for new emails. Great. Now, what are we going to do next? Well, in our case, what we're going to do is, if you think of our North Star, we are going to try and build all the context needed to respond to an email. So let me go ahead and show you exactly what I'm talking about. So here's a quick visualization of exactly how everything fits together, and let me walk you through it. So ultimately, what we're trying to do is create a prompt that we're going to pass over to ChatGPT that's going to describe our purpose of creating a draft email, and ultimately, hey, it's up to you to go off and actually write that email so we can eventually save it as a draft. Now, how do we craft this perfect response and prompt that we're going to pass over to ChatGPT? Well, we are going to pass in a bunch of different contexts. So we're actually going to pass in a bunch of strings that we're going to be fed into this prompt. So specifically, we're going to pull all of our previous emails that we have saved in Airtable, and we're going to add that as a section inside of this prompt. Then we're going to pull from our knowledge base, add that in as another section in our prompt. And then finally, we're going to add in our voice prompt so it knows how to respond in our voice. So hopefully you can kind of see we're just stacking in all the proper information so that ultimately we can write that perfect draft email. Okay, so let's go ahead and hop back over to Airtable and actually build this out. All right, so now that we're back over in Make, we can go ahead and start working on our second module. And just to give a little bit more context, what we're trying to do, our first module went off and looks for all new records that are inserted into Airtable, and each new record is a specific email. And what we're going to do in the new module is we're going to say, oh, okay, a new email was just sent to us from Bob. We want to go off and search for all previous emails where Bob's involved somehow. So here's how we set up and search through our Airtable records. We're going to go ahead and click Airtable, and then we're going to do search records. Now, here's what we're going to do next. Inside of here, we specifically want to go off and click the base. And this was from our YouTube database that we set up and from the email table specifically. So we're going to grab email tables. Now, here's where things get a little bit interesting because we get to go off and actually start saying, what fields do we want to grab? So in our case, we're just going to say, yeah, I'll go ahead and grab all the fields that we find as we're going off and searching through records. So we're going to say, cool, I want to grab all records. Now, how do we want to sort those fields as they come to us? Well, in our case, we're going to say, I want to just look at the most recent emails first. So if Bob and I have had 1,000 conversations together, I want to look at the most recent conversations. So that's why we're setting this up. So I want to look at date, and I want to grab descending, which just means the newest ones come first. Cool. Now, after we've set that up, what we can do is start working on a formula together. So let me show you what we're going to do. So our formula is basically our filter, meaning how do we want to go off and actually search through all of our previous records in Airtable to find emails that involve Bob. So what we can do is go ahead and I'll paste in the formula and I'll walk you through exactly what's going on, because this is definitely one of the more confusing parts inside of this. So what we're trying to do is say, all right, I would like to search through all emails where, so we have an or statement, where Bob is involved as a sender, so sender, or Bob was included as a recipient. That's just including basically all types of conversations we could have with Bob. Bob sent us something, or Bob was tagged as a recipient, whether we received an email together. So that's exactly what this means. Now, what we have to do is, let me walk you through a few of the finer parts. So first, what we have to do, I'm going to update you see how these are black? Black means this was related to an old module I was copying over. So we actually have to update sender and put in and click our new variables that pop up over here. So let me walk you through exactly how this works so it makes sense, because it's definitely not the most clear at first. So Airtable actually has its own formulas used to filter records. So I actually just used ChatGPT to help me come up and generate this formula right here. And basically the way it works is query one, I want to find, and then here is what you're searching for. And then here's in what column you're looking for the data. So I want to cast the sender, so bob@gmail.com. I want to make sure it's lowercase, just to make sure, we don't have any case matching issues. And then I want to say, all right, was Bob anywhere inside of the sender column? So how you do this is you once again make sure we cast it to lowercase, put parentheses, and then we pass in the parameter. So in our case, you use curly brackets to access the column name, because if you remember back over in Airtable, whenever we were creating the sender column, that's exactly the same text we put in here. So whatever the column name is, just put it inside of curly brackets right here. Then what we're doing is just basically greater than 0 just means we found something. If there was nothing, we would get back 0. So if we found something, great. That means it's a pass. This actually works. So that's if Bob was a sender of an email to us. And the other option is if Bob was tagged in as a recipient of another email that maybe we received from our boss or something. So the exact same thing works over here. So once again, we're going to find where Bob, who is the sender, basically was a recipient inside of an email. And once again, we're going to cast it to lowercase and we're going to put it in curly brackets because recipients was the name of the column inside of Airtable. And this is exactly how we're going to check for all previous conversations involving between us and Bob, where we can go off and say, yeah, this is all the emails that I found. And what we can do actually is go off and set a limit. So in our case, we can just leave the default where it's going to find the past 10 previous emails between us and Bob so that we don't accidentally overload our context window. Because with the model we're going to be using later, ChatGPT 4.0, you can have 128,000 tokens, which is roughly about 30,000 words, which is more than plenty for this. But we do just need to keep that in the back of our head as we're, passing in data to our prompt that we're going to put together. Okay, cool. So this is working. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and press OK so that this is set up. And now let's actually try running this real fast together so we can actually see if it's able to find anything. All right, so we can go ahead and test this out by first right-clicking Airtable on the first module, and then we'll click where to start. In our case, I'm going to do choose manually, and only one email is going to pop up. And the reason why this email is going to pop up is because there's only one email in our entire database table so far. So we're going to go ahead and hop back over here and say, yep, that is the email I want you to start with. I'm going to click OK. Then we're going to go ahead and click run once to run through the entire automation. And what you'll notice is there's a little one right here. So we can say like, yeah, it did actually find an email. How did it find an email? Let's go ahead and look at the inputs. So our formula was like, hey, I want to find all emails where the sender, Brandon9598, who sent that email, you can see it right here, was included in the sender column. And that's exactly what happens. Brandon9598 was in the sender column. So that's how we were able to find this. Now, there is one thing that you're not going to see right now, but we're going to have to worry about it, is obviously we're looking for a bunch of emails. So if there had been 10 emails in there from me, what you'd like to notice is eventually we're going to have to kind of how we did earlier where we had an array of objects that we need to put into a string. Well, we have to do that again. And the reason why is because the output of Airtable is a bunch of bundles. And what we have to do is actually join together these bundles. So let's just imagine right now there was 10 items in here. Well, there would be 10 bundles right here as an output. And what we have to do as make automators is actually put all of those bundles together in an array so that we can actually act on it. So how do we go ahead and do that? Well, there is a special module called an aggregator. So we're going to go ahead and aggregate, let's see, yep, an array aggregator. And let me show you exactly what this does, because it definitely doesn't, it's a little confusing the first time you see it. So what this is going to do is we have the ability to start putting a bunch of those bundles together into one single array. So we're going to go ahead and click right here. And which module do we want to actually focus on? Well, in our case, we're going to work on this search records. This is the module that we want to actually monitor the outputs of and actually merge all those outputs into one array. Okay, hopefully that's making sense. Now we get to pick which fields we would like to aggregate. So in our case, really the only thing that we care about is the content, because the content is eventually what we're trying to pass over into the prompt that we're going to be building together. So we want to have the content from the email that Bob sent us and the email that both Bob and I were tagged in. So that's the only field that we really care about, is just aggregating all of the content together. And that's all you have to do for the array aggregator. So we're going to go ahead and say check. Now what I'm going to do, let's do a little bit of house cleaning real fast. So let's go ahead and rename this to our, let's call it our find previous emails. That looks great. And then we'll just leave this and we'll just rename it to email array aggregator. Great. And then now what we can do, let's go ahead and try running it again together so you can see how it works. So once again, we're going to choose where to start, choose manually. In our case, there's only that one email in there. So let's go ahead and do it and click run once. And then that's fine. We're going to go ahead and run it anyway. And then what you'll notice is the output is now going to be basically a single bundle that has an array. And that array is exactly what we're going to use later on to say, oh yeah, I want to grab all of these different emails in this array. So hopefully you can see how we're starting to build up to set ourselves up for success when we're creating that ChatGPT prompt later on. All right, now let's keep cruising along. And next we're going to start working on our knowledge base. And our knowledge base just includes everything that AI, specifically ChatGPT, knows about us. Let's go ahead and hop over to ChatGPT and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. All right, guys, so what we're trying to do ultimately is we're trying to create a knowledge base about everything of who we are, what we do, what services we offer, offer, and we're trying to answer some frequently asked questions. So what I have found is the best way to just quickly extract and generate a large document, which is going to be our knowledge base, is to actually head over to ChatGPT and pass in this prompt that I'm showing you guys right now. So what we're going to do is just say, hey, I'm trying to create a knowledge base. Can you please generate a bulleted list of important information about me? Basically just create my digital profile. What do? Who do I work for, etc. And ultimately I'm trying to create I just literally told it what I was trying to do. I'm making an email autoresponder, and this autoresponder tool needs to have knowledge about me so that when it's trying to generate a response, it knows everything. And I'm actually just not going to show you, like, it knows my name and it knows a bunch more. So I'm not even going to show you because it knows too much. It's actually scary how much it knows, but it's perfect for going to go ahead and generating like a ton of information to help create a proper initial starting point for our knowledge base. Okay, so you're literally just going to copy all the information that it creates right here, and we're going to use it in the next step, which is going to be adding all this information over to Airtable. So here's what we're going to do next. Over inside of Airtable, we are going to create a new table together. This is going to be our knowledge base table where we actually store that input. So let's go ahead and work on adding a new table together. So just click plus right here. We're going to say add from scratch. And this is going to be our knowledge base table. Go ahead and save it. And we're going to go ahead and delete a lot of these fields. So delete field, we're going to delete field. And then we're going to go ahead and keep one, and we're just going to call this our business information. Now, what we're going to do is change this to a text area, or I think it's just long text. Great. And yeah, we can enable rich text formatting. Now, here's what we're going to change as well. We're going to save this, and then we're going to update the first field to be the ID, because there's only going to be one item in this entire knowledge base, because it's only generating emails for us. And we're going to change this to the auto number and save it. That's going to work great. And let's go ahead and drop the 2 extra items. So I'm going to go ahead and real quick paste in all of my information and just go ahead and give you a few extra ideas of things that you might want to add inside of your knowledge base. So 1 second. All right, so I'm back and I've pasted in all the information it generated for me, and I'm going to show you a few extra things you might want to add at the end. So you can just click in here, and once you click in here, you can see it's like it has my stuff. I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom real fast. So and I want to show you a few extra things that you want to add. So what I like to do is I like to do the dry principle. Don't repeat yourself. So what I'm hoping to do in this knowledge base is every time I make a change, or if I realize, hey, I'm getting this question a lot, I want to add it inside of here as something that it should do in the next email response. So for example, I added a frequently asked questions section, and basically just like, hey, if someone talks to me about a sponsorship deal, please just tell them thank you for considering me, but let them know I'm not interested in. So this is just a cool way to where, like, let's just say you offered services for your businesses and you weren't taking one-on-one clients right now. You were only taking on, big projects from big companies. You could put that in here. So this is just like a really cool way to make sure you're not always having to go off and like, no, that's not the right response. You're just going to come back into your knowledge base, update the text to go off and say, yep, this is how I want to respond to these types of questions going forward, and then we're good to go. All right, cool. So now that we have your knowledge base set up, what we can actually do is go ahead and head back over to Make and actually start pulling out this information, basically pulling out our knowledge base field right here. So let me show you exactly how we're going to do this. So let's go ahead and back over to Make real fast. Let's see. Great. And then we're going to add a new module, and this is going to be our fetch client knowledge base. So let's go ahead in here. So we're going to go over to Airtable. And then in this case, what we're going to do is specifically say, I believe it's a get a record. So we're going to get a record. Awesome. And then now we're going to actually go off and find that specific field. And later on, I'm going to show you how you can actually create an interface so your clients can go off and update that. They're not in the database. They actually have a nice little form they can go off and update. So we're going to go ahead and say YouTube database, and then we're going to look at the knowledge base table. And then when it comes to the record ID, all we want to do is we're going to go ahead and click search. And then it's going to go ahead and show all the possible fields. So in our case, it was just the business information section. And we're going to say, okay, that is actually it. And it's going to grab the actual record. All right, cool. So now that is set up, we're going to hit OK. And let's go ahead and rename this so we know exactly what this is actually fetching. So we're going to say fetch client knowledge base. Awesome. Now this is set up. So what we're going to do next is we're going to actually hop back over and go off and generate a new section and table inside of our database, which is going to store the voice of our client. How do they talk? How do they respond? So let's go ahead and start working on adding that over into Airtable right now. So hopping back over to Airtable, once again, we're going to go off and create a new table. And let's see if we can actually duplicate this table because it's going to be pretty similar. So yeah, we're just going to duplicate table. And this time we're going to rename this one to just voice of client. Great. Now this one's going to be pretty straightforward. And all we're going to do differently is instead of having business information now, we're just going to have a voice prompt. And this is where, once again, it's a long text. It's where our users are going to be able to eventually, in a nice form we're going to build for them, go off and say like, hey, here's how I respond. And we can go ahead and, generate something for them so it at least has a good starting point. So we're going to go ahead and click save. Now, what we're going to do is go ahead and start working on passing in our prompt. And so I'm just going to go ahead and click plus. And I'm going to go ahead and paste mine in, and feel free to use it for inspiration when you're going off and generating your own response. This is actually how I respond to everything. So here's how I like to talk, and here's how I respond. So basically, I'm just like, hey, you're a ghostwriter, and it's you are being fine-tuned this type of strategy. It's a little informal, it's engaging, a little slight sales, and your job is to mirror, my email communication style. Make sure it's clear and direct, but while at the same time being friendly and approachable. I like to, I'm basically a happy guy. I like to just be like, hey, bring the energy and kind of just go from there. And then I talk about how I like to structure things. So like outline steps to make it very easy and clear. So this is exactly the type of way I would like to respond. But once again, your client might like to respond differently, and we're going to build a nice interface for them so that they can come in here and be like, no, I like to respond this way. So this is just a good starting point. So we're going to go ahead and say, okay, that is ready. Now we can actually hop back over to make once again, and we're going to basically copy this one, except now we're going to fetch our voice of client. So in this case, we're going to do Airtable, get record, and this time we're going to go off and search our new table. So YouTube database, specifically, we're going to be looking at the voice of client table, and we're going to search for that record one more time. And this time it's going to be our voice prompt. Awesome. So that is officially good to go. We're going to go ahead and click OK. And now we've actually went ahead and put together all the raw information, all the raw ingredients of going off and, we have our previous email, we have our knowledge base, and we have our voice prompt. But before we go off and create this new ChatGPT section, I want to go ahead and show you how we can make that nice looking interface so that our clients can actually come in here and update their knowledge base on their own and update their voice prompt so we don't have to always be involved in the project. All right, so let's go ahead and head back over to Airtable, and this is where we're going to get into a new section of working with Airtable. So you're going to click interfaces, and then as you can see, this is a very cool way to make, basically drag and drop your data and go off and make cool dashboards, or you can go off and make a ton of other cool interactive ways for your clients to interact with your data. So in our case, we're going to go off and start building a new interface. And an interface is it's a really nice website we can share with our clients to update everything. So we're just going to call this, I'll call this my YouTube interface. I'll just call it my YouTube dashboard right now, and let's just go ahead and give it a quick little book. That looks awesome. So we're gonna go ahead and click next. Then it's going to ask us which style would we like to showcase our data. So this is a little interesting, but if you think about it, over in our database, we actually have a list. So we have a database, so we have a list of records. However, in our case, we only have one specific record that we want to list. So all we need to do is go ahead and click list right here, because we want the user to be able to see what's in the database already. So we're going to click next. Now, once this is done, it's going to ask us which tables we'd like to show. And in our case, let's just start off with knowledge base. And we're going to get this looking really nice and clean together in just a second. So let's go ahead and click finish. So you can see we have the beginning of a dashboard. Now, this is we want to give this to our clients. So let me show you how we can start editing this. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so we can have a little bit more room. But first things that we want to do is we want to start dropping all the ability for everything up here. We want all of that gone. There's no reason to have ID. And all we really want to do is just go off and show this information right here, our personal information, and allow them to quickly come in here and edit it. They can't create anything. They can't do anything else. All they can do is come in here and edit this information. That's our entire goal of what we're shooting for. So here's how we're going to do that. First, you can just go ahead and click the outer rectangle, and it's going to say, hey, here's all the options that you can do. And we're going to toggle everything off. There's no reason they should be able to do that. And when it comes to the button, there shouldn't be a button. Then what we want to do next, that's even a print. We're going to drop that. There's no reason to have that. It's just, here's what you got, here's what you get. Now what we can do is, this was like the table controls, and now we can start working on each individual item. So first, you're going to click hierarchy. And what we're trying to do is say, hey, I don't want this ID to show. I only want personal information to show up. So we're going to click the gear near hierarchy, and it's going to start iterating through a bunch of things that we can change. So in our case, what do you want to show? So we're just going to click next. We're going to click next again. And then we're finally going to get to what fields do you want to display? In our case, we're going to turn off ID, and we only want to show business information. Looks great. So this is looking pretty great. Now we do have to worry about one thing, which is going to be allowing users to like edit and add information. So we do not want users to be able to click plus. So this is looking great. So if this is like, we do want people to be able to edit inline, but they cannot. You see whenever I click this button right here, add or delete records, it shows up this right here where they can come in here and add a record. We don't want any records added. They have one knowledge base is the best way to think about this. So go ahead and close that out. And then we're going to go ahead and publish these changes. So this is looking great so far. And I just want to show you what it looks like. So I'm not going to click the button because it's going to show too much, but just know when you click this button, it allows the user to start editing all the text. So the best way, let's go ahead and actually do this for our voice prompt, and I'll actually be able to click into that one. So what you're going to do, click the drop down button right here, hit edit page. And then what we're going to do is you can hit pages. And this is where we're going to add in a new page. So we're going to say, all right, I want to work on another list view. And in this case, I want to start working on voice of client. And we're basically going to do the exact same thing again. So this time what we're going to do, come back over here. Let's click the top, and you're going to be an expert at this because you've done it twice now. So we're going to go ahead and drop all of those. Let's drop the print, click inside of the actual table itself. Let's do the hierarchy one more time. So we're going to say, I only want to show the voice prompt. I don't want to show anything else. So drop the ID, click done. And then now this is looking pretty great. And then what we can do is say, I do want to allow editing records inline. All right, this is looking pretty good. Let's publish the changes and then let's look at them in action. So click publish, looks good. Now, what's cool, like I was saying earlier, a user can just click in here and start editing. So they're like, oh, I've noticed whenever my emails are creating responses, they're a little too casual. So you'll be able to share this link with them right here, invite them, and then they'll be able to come in here and say, please, be a little more formal, or however they want to update things. And then what's cool is these changes will actually be propagated over into our database. So if you hop back over to YouTube database, all these changes will appear right here. So all around, it's kind of cool how we now have a database. We're putting our developer hats on, and we've made a very cool, quick, interactive, interface for our users to go off and interact with. So we didn't have to spend, time generating a new page or anything like that. We can just share it with them. And life's good. All right, give yourself a pat on the back. You're now basically towards the very end where we're going to start working on setting up ChatGPT inside of Make to go off and start actually, going off and making sure we're going to generate a nice email. So let's go ahead and start working on that. All right, so we can go ahead and start adding our ChatGPT module. But before we do, let's just do a little bit more housekeeping one more time. Let's rename this to say fetch voice prompt, just so we know exactly what each one of these are doing. Keep everything nice and clean. All right, so now that we've done that, it is time to start working on our new module. And this one's going to be from ChatGPT. And what we're going to do is once again, create a completion prompt. So let's go ahead and start setting this one up. Now we're going to start walking through this from top to bottom so that you can understand exactly what's going on and why we're doing it. So first things first, when it comes to the model, we do want to use one of the more advanced models because we're passing in a ton of information and needs to be very smart and creative at interpreting everything we're telling it to create a nice response. So we're going to go ahead and click model, and we're just going to use ChatGPT 4o. So just the system one right here. Now we're going to scroll down just a little bit and start working on messages. And this is where all the magics are happening, to where we've built all the ingredients, the raw ingredients, and we're going to start passing them into one actual prompt. So let me show you exactly what this is going to look like. So first we're going to do this from the assistant side, and then we're going to go ahead and pass in a lot of content. But don't worry, I'm going to walk you through this line by line so that we can work on this together. And like I said earlier, you can go ahead and download these templates by clicking the link below, so you don't have to worry about typing all these out by yourself. So how do we get this to work? Well, we're going to be telling our AI that you are a professional email ghostwriter. Your job is to generate an email response based on an email I give you. And also, going back to our raw ingredients, I'm going to give you the conversation history, a knowledge base, and the client's writing style. And when you generate a response, it's important to make sure that you generate an email that's specific to their writing style. And like basically, I'm giving you the information, now use the information. And it's important as a ghostwriter. This section right here, important notes, this is what I like to do in case whenever I'm building something, I'll take my first stab, and every time the AI makes an error, I add an important note section and I just add a new thing. So at first, if it's not responding like it's the client, you just come in here and add an important note. You respond like you're the client. Make sure that you generate email response in HTML, and you'll see why later on. And don't add anything else that's fancy. Don't do like any tags or anything like that. Just make sure it's raw HTML and basically just give me the raw result. Don't do any custom fonts or styles. Just stick to the basics. And also, your client is Brandon Hancock. So if anyone's like, hey, Brandon, are you free? It needs to know like, oh, I am Brandon because I'm his ghostwriter. Great. And then finally, don't make anything else up. If you don't know the answer, just say you don't know, and that's totally okay. But we can actually clean that up and put it right here. All right. Now, here's where we're going to start putting in all of our variables that we've set up so far. So first things first, we want to add in the content. Now, content is going to come from the first Airtable record. So this is going to be the actual section right here, content. So this is what we're trying to respond to. This is coming from Airtable. When it comes to our voice of client, this is going to come from the fetch voice prompt right here. So you're just going to say voice prompt. Looks great. Now what we're going to do is do our client knowledge base right here. So close that one out. Open up fetch client knowledge base. That's why we name them, so it's easier to like manage everything. And we're going to do our business information right here. And now here is where things get a little bit more in the weeds, and we do our final hoorah with making things a little bit magic. So what do we do? Well, if you remember a while back, whenever we were trying to go from an array of recipients all the way to, an array of recipient objects, and then we did an array of recipient emails and eventually put it in a string, we're doing the exact same thing again. Except this time, what we're doing is pulling all of this information from our email aggregator. So what we're trying to do is say, okay, email aggregator, I saw that you now have an array of content. So what I would like to do is instead of doing all of that mapping, each content field is going to be a raw text string. So all we're trying to do is join together all those array of strings. We're just trying to put it together into one super large string. So we're going to first pull out the content from each item in the array. Oops, sorry, I had the wrong button. Make sure you just click array. And what we're going to do is say, all right, I want to, for each item in the array, I want to pull out the content field, and I know to type content right here, because when I hover over content, it says the raw title is right there, and it's just content. So make it match. Then we're doing the join call, and it's saying, how do you want to join each piece of information that we're extracting? So in our case, what I want to do is just put a new line and a bunch of dashes. So that kind of looks like an email chain history where it goes like, this one was yesterday's email, dash, 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 dash. Here was the day before email, dash, 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 dash. And it keeps going. So that's exactly why we have set up our previous emails in this fancy configuration. So we're going to go hit OK. Now that we have this set up, I think it's time for us to go ahead and rerun this. And what's pretty cool, you can click that auto align button and it puts everything nice and formatted for you. So quick hack. So we're going to run this again so you can see this bad boy in action. So we're going to click choose where to start, choose manually. And right now there's only one email in here. Later on, we're going to do another one so you can see it full in action. So I'm going to click OK. Now let's go ahead and run this entire thing so we can see it working in action. So it's going to run, it's going to fetch it, it's going to pull it together, fetch from Airtable, fetch once again from Airtable, and go off and generate a nice response. So what we can do real fast, hopping back over to Airtable, you can see our initial email was basically asking content. I've been watching your channel for a long time. Are you available for a one-on-one coaching? I need help building this out. So you can see what we're going to do inside of this output. You can see it generated a response in HTML exactly like we asked it to do. And you can see it's like, hey, Brandon, thanks for reaching out in the kind words about my videos. I'm excited to hear about your interest in one-on-one coaching. I do have this program, which is pretty cool that it knows like I have this program, and that just might be where you're looking at. So like it's already going off and like that prompt that we did earlier to get all the information out about myself, you can see it found that I offer certain products. So you can see, hey, here's what it does. Here's what it helps you can do. Definitely think you should try that first. Hope that helps. So pretty darn cool if you ask me. And, as you're doing this for other businesses, they also will probably offer additional products and services that they want their clients to be aware about. So hopefully you see the power of this. And for whatever reason, if it didn't generate the proper response, don't worry. We would just hop back over to Airtable and update our knowledge base to say like, hey, if someone asks about one-on-one coaching, give them this type of response, and it would. And then for all future emails, the response would be exactly what we would like it. So we're not always typing new emails from scratch every time. So hopefully you're seeing the power of this, because I think this is super cool. All right, so now we're in the final step where we're going to start working on setting up Gmail. So let me show you exactly how we're going to do that. So the first thing we're gonna do, and per usual, we're gonna do some housekeeping just to make sure everything is named properly. So rename this, and we're gonna just call this one Generate AI Email Response. All right, cool. That's now we are set up for success. So go ahead and click plus, and now we're gonna head over to Gmail. And in this time, we're going to go off and click Create a Draft. Now, here's exactly what we have to do inside of here to properly, take that AI response and save it as a draft email. So we're going to click Folder, and then inside of Folder, what it's going to do is allow us to look at all of our folders inside of our inbox. And obviously we want this to go to drafts. Now, when it comes to who are we trying to send this draft email to, we're going to go ahead and click Add Recipient. Let's collapse all of these and look back for the new email that was originally sent. And we obviously want to respond to the sender who sent us this email in the first place. Now, when it comes to subject, this is gonna be super straightforward. We're just gonna put a so like we're replying, space, and then we're gonna go ahead and put the subject. So you can see the subject is awesome content. Well, we're gonna respond with awesome content. So they can just see like, yeah, this is my response. Now, when it comes to the actual content, what we wanna do next is go ahead, come down here in content, and we want to use our AI response. So you can see right here in result, you can see everything is set up. So we're going to use that result right there. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. And now that we have set everything up and it looks great, let's go ahead and try running this so we can actually see it work in real time. So let's go ahead and run it, do the whole process one last final time. So we'll quickly go ahead and right click this, choose where to start, manual. Then we're going to go ahead and click that one item that we have set so far. We're going to go ahead and click run once, and it's going to go once again through the whole process. I'll go over here to OpenAI, go off and generate that awesome, perfect response. Once it's done, it's then going to go off and say, cool, we have the response. Let's go ahead and save it as a draft over in Gmail. Everything looks like it worked successfully. So I'm going to pause and we're going to hop over to Gmail to see what it did. So I pulled up the email for us, and let's go ahead and look at these results so we can see if this is exactly what we're looking for. So once again, here is the original email. Hey, Brandon, like the video, you free for one-on-one coaching. And then this time what it did, like this is exactly how I respond, guys. So this is why I'm like, this is just so freaking cool. So you can see it's responding to the guy who sent this, and it's just saying, hey man, thanks for reaching out. Once again, I appreciate it. I have these types of programs. It's designed to help developers like you. You can see it's a little bit different than the last one where it was like, I recommend starting here. So you can see it's a little bit different, but it's written very well. Like I don't write this well, so I appreciate the AI works better than me, but you can see it responds to exactly his ask, kind of converts him to like, hey, I'd actually recommend checking out this. Happy to chat about it more if you have other ideas and questions, let me know. Cheers. So this is so nice because now I'm not going to hop over to my inbox, but just know if this was you in your inbox, every time there was a new email from a client or, someone else, what'll happen is it'll pop up and it'll say, you have a new email from Brandon, whoever, and then it'll also say draft right next to it. And you'll know that that draft is an auto-generated AI response that you've set up here inside with this new AI automation. So all around, it is so cool that this exists. And I hope you can see the power of like, man, this would have taken, even if we were just to copy and paste this response over to ChatGPT and then give it all the content, give it all the bullet points, tell it how to respond, that would take, that takes a few minutes and it's annoying. You don't want to do that. But this is way better because now you can go, yeah, that is pretty much exactly what I'd like to say. Oh, by the way, you can add like a few final tweaks, but this gets you to the 95% solution and sometimes 100%, because I would honestly just go off and send this if someone had sent me the same email. So I hope you can see the power of this. I'm so excited that we just built this together. But that's a wrap for this video, guys. I hope y'all love learning how to make this AI email autoresponder. I cannot wait to see what you guys go off and build next. And just 2 quick reminders, all the source code was completely for free. Check out the link down in the description below. And if you're looking for some additional support, I have that free AI Developer Accelerator School where we have weekly coaching calls. I'd love to see you over there. Check the link down in the description below. But enough of that, I have a ton of other AI related content on this channel, full stack tutorials, crew AI, everything you could possibly want. Just check whatever link is popping up on the description in the video now. Can't wait to see you guys in the next one. See ya.